I want to jump into the two big games in the SEC that are coming up on Saturday. Arkansas on the road against Georgia. Right now, they are a 19-point underdog. Ole Miss on the road against Alabama. The Rebels are a 14.5-point underdog. I've already bet these games, Furman. I took both underdogs. I took Arkansas and I took Ole Miss. I also parlayed them together. I think these numbers are going to come down over the course of the week. I think they are inflated, especially that 14.5 I feel like is going to come down. These are big games, and what Vegas is telling us is there's a big gap between Georgia, Alabama, and basically everybody else, not just in the SEC, but in college football. Is that the right read? What is your early take on these two big top 25 matchups of undefeated teams?
Well, we'll look at the first game in Tuscaloosa, and I think when you look at a number of 14.5 with a total in the high 70s, it suggests there could be very high variance. So laying 14 in a game that you figure one of those teams is going to have to get to at least 50 to comfortably cover, it isn't as big a deal as, say, laying 7, where the over-under in the NFL is typically in the mid to low 40s on some of those games. So it's a different handicap there. I do agree with your side, though. I think Ole Miss offensively has way too much firepower to be kept down by an Alabama defense that hasn't exactly lived up to preseason expectations. And I think for Alabama, you worry about their weaponry. Do they have the firepower with this current iteration of the Crimson Tide if Ole Miss starts rolling downhill to match them score for score? I love the fact that Ole Miss comes into this game with a rest advantage. So Lane Kiffin poking the bear with all of his comments. Yep, poking the bear with all of his comments about Nick Saban and everything else leading up to the game. He has 2 weeks to prepare an offensive game plan for a quarterback that's now the Heisman frontrunner as far as FanDuel is concerned, and Matt Corral. I think you're on the right side there, and I do think the game goes over the total in the high 70s. Now, I disagree a little bit on the Arkansas-Georgia game, and the reason for that is because we still don't know exactly who's going to be under center for Arkansas. I assume it's going to be KJ Jefferson, but he wasn't able to finish the game over the weekend against Texas A&M. And when you look at Arkansas, this is clearly going to be their biggest challenge defensively, maybe not just to date, maybe of the entire SEC conference schedule. And I worry a little bit about their offensive line holding up in the trenches against a Georgia defensive front that could be living in the backfield from start to finish. When you look at Georgia, sure, they haven't really been tested offensively, maybe since the opener against Clemson, but I like the confidence they're playing with. I think JT Daniels gives them a viable quarterback option. And when even Stetson Bennett, if JT Daniels were to get nicked up or be ineffective, could come in and fill in admirably. But again, laying 18.5 with a total in the high 40s, a much different dynamic here. But I do lean Georgia and Ole Miss. So agree with you on one game and disagree on the other.